There is a moment when the body understands before the mind admits anything. You are sitting alone in front of a screen, reading a sentence that should be harmless. It is only words. It is only information. But your throat tightens, your face heats, and your fingers move toward the keyboard before you have even reached the end of the paragraph. The strange part is how fast it happens. Before you have checked the source, before you have examined the argument, before you have decided what you believe, something inside you has already declared danger. You are not calmly processing information anymore. You are preparing a defense. Maybe the article is about politics. Maybe it is a message from someone you hurt years ago. Maybe it is feedback from work, a study that contradicts a belief you built your identity around, or one sentence from a friend that lands too close to the truth. Whatever it is, the reaction feels larger than the information itself. You tell yourself you are being rational. You tell yourself the source is biased, the tone is unfair, the wording is manipulative, the situation is more complicated than they understand. Some of that may even be true. But beneath the argument, the body is still burning. This is the part we rarely talk about. Changing your mind is often described like updating software, as if a human belief were just a file that can be replaced when a better version arrives. New evidence comes in. Old belief goes out. The system improves, but human beings do not work that cleanly. A belief is not only a sentence in the mind. It can be a room you have lived in for years. It can contain your memories, your loyalty, your moral innocence, your belonging, your pride, your grief, and the private story you use to keep yourself intact. So when a belief is threatened, the mind does not always hear. Here is new information. Sometimes it hears, your shelter is being taken away. Sometimes it hears, the person you thought you were may not survive this. And the body responds accordingly. This is why changing your mind can feel physically painful. Not because you are weak, not because you are stupid, not because you secretly hate truth, but because some truths do not simply correct what you think. They disturb the architecture that allowed you to live with yourself. In the 1950s, psychologist Leon Festinger gave a name to this inner disturbance: cognitive dissonance. The phrase sounds clean, almost mechanical, as if it belongs on a chart or inside a textbook. But the experience itself is not clean. It is heat, tension, avoidance, irritation, rationalization, and the private panic of two parts of the self no longer fitting together. Festinger's idea was that when people hold two cognitions that conflict, they feel psychological discomfort. A cognition can be a belief, a value, a memory, a perception, or a fact about one's own behavior. The discomfort does not sit quietly. It pushes the person to reduce the tension somehow. One way is to change the belief. Another is to change the behavior. But there is a third way, and it may be the most human. You can build a justification strong enough to let the old self continue. A person believes they are kind, then says something cruel. A person believes they are rational, then realizes they spread something false. A person believes they are fair, then sees evidence that they treated someone unfairly. In each case, the conflict is not just between two ideas. It is between an idea and an identity. The mind wants peace, but peace does not always come through truth. Sometimes peace comes through rearrangement. You move the facts around until they no longer accuse you so directly. You did not really hurt them. They misunderstood. You were tired. They pushed you. Everyone lies a little. The issue is complicated. The study probably has flaws. The criticism is coming from the wrong kind of person. Notice how many of these explanations may contain fragments of reality. That is what makes self-deception so durable. The mind does not need pure fiction. It only needs enough truth to hide the truth it cannot bear. In 1959, Festinger and James Carl Smith ran one of the classic experiments in this area. Participants performed a boring task. Then some were asked to tell another person that the task had been interesting. One group was paid a larger amount to lie. Another group was paid only a small amount. The result became famous because the smaller payment created a strange pressure. Those who were paid very little had less external justification for saying something they did not believe. To reduce the discomfort, many shifted their internal attitude and later rated the task as more enjoyable than it had been. The lesson was not simply that people lie. The darker lesson was that after people justify themselves, they may begin to believe the justification. What begins as a bridge across one uncomfortable moment can become part of the landscape. This happens everywhere. Someone makes a compromise they once would have condemned, then tells themselves it was necessary. Later, because it was necessary, they take the next compromise more easily. Then another. Eventually, the person is living in a moral location they never consciously chose. Surrounded by explanations, they built one step at a time. Cognitive dissonance is not always dramatic. It is often quiet and domestic. It happens in the kitchen after an argument, in the car after a lie, in the office after an unfair decision, in the bed at night when one sentence from the day keeps returning with a little too much force. A man stands in front of the bathroom mirror after yelling at someone he loves. He knows the exact moment his voice changed. He knows the sentence he should not have said. But within minutes, another voice starts speaking inside him. I was provoked. I have been patient for too long. They always do this. I did not say anything that was not true. Maybe I was harsh, but someone had to finally say it. By morning, the memory has softened. The cruelty has been wrapped in context. The apology that nearly formed in his throat has become unnecessary. He has not forgotten what happened. He has edited its meaning. This is where Elliot Aronson's work becomes important. Aronson argued that dissonance becomes especially painful when it threatens the self-concept. The deepest discomfort is not always caused by two random beliefs clashing. It is caused when the evidence collides with the belief that I am a good, intelligent, competent, moral, reasonable person. This is why small facts can create large reactions. A correction is rarely just a correction. It may imply that you were careless. A criticism is rarely just criticism. It may imply that your self-image is incomplete. An accusation is rarely only about one event. It may force you to look at a pattern. The human being does not only defend opinions. The human being defends the right to keep looking in the mirror without flinching. And when a fact threatens that right, the body can treat it like an attack. This explains why being wrong in private is often easier than being wrong in public. In private, the self can change quietly. In public, the self must survive witnesses. The audience makes the old position heavier, because changing now does not only mean accepting a new truth, it means being seen abandoning the old one. This is one reason people double down. Not always because the argument is strong, sometimes because too many people watched them make it. The belief has become tied to reputation, and reputation has become tied to survival. Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson later describe self-justification as a kind of slippery slope. People rarely leap into the worst version of themselves all at once. They move one small step, then justify it. That justification makes the next step easier, then the next. Each explanation becomes a plank on a bridge, leading farther away from the original self. At the beginning, turning back would be embarrassing. Later, turning back becomes devastating, because turning back means admitting not only that one action was wrong, but that many justifications built afterward were also wrong. The person must face not one mistake, but an entire architecture of self-protection. This is why some people defend old choices with unusual intensity. They are not defending the choice alone. They are defending every day they lived after it. They are defending the relationships shaped by it, the opportunities taken because of it, the people dismissed to protect it, the version of themselves that depended on it being understandable. There is an old terror here. What if I was not simply mistaken? What if I became the kind of person who needed that mistake to be true? The mind recoils from that possibility. It reaches for anything that reduces the pain. A technicality, a counterexample, a flaw in the critic, a memory where the other person behaved badly, a sentence that begins with yes, but. Sometimes yes, but is honest. Sometimes it adds necessary complexity. But sometimes it is a small door through which the self escapes before truth can finish speaking. This is why changing your mind is not only intellectual, it can be moral, it can be social, it can be existential. To change one belief may require changing the story of why you acted, why you stayed, why you fought, why you judged, why you followed, why you ignored what was visible. Festinger's most famous public case came from When Prophecy Fails, the 1956 book he wrote with Henry Rieken and Stanley Schachter. They observed a small group that believed a catastrophic flood would destroy the world, and that they would be rescued by beings from another planet. When the prophecy failed, some members didn't simply abandon the belief. Some became more committed. The story should be handled carefully. The research has been criticized, including concerns that the observers may have influenced the group they were studying. But as a psychological image, it remains disturbing. Sometimes failed prophecy does not kill belief. Sometimes it threatens so much that belief has to grow stronger to survive the failure. Imagine giving your time, your dignity, your relationships, and your future to a belief. Imagine telling others they are blind while you alone can see. Imagine waiting for the world to end, then waking up to an ordinary morning. The sun rises. The street is still there. The neighbors are still alive. The belief has failed. If the belief was only information, you could drop it. But it was not only information. It was community. It was meaning. It was sacrifice. It was the story that made you feel chosen. To abandon it immediately would be to stand in the ruins with no shelter at all. So the mind may build a new explanation. The world was spared because of our faith. The test was spiritual. The outsiders cannot understand. The failure was not failure. It was a deeper confirmation. From the outside, this looks insane. From the inside, it may feel like survival. This is the same machinery that appears in smaller lives. A person stays in a damaging relationship for years, then defends the partner more fiercely. The more evidence appears. A parent refuses to admit they harmed a child because the admission would destroy the identity of being a loving parent. A political believer rejects obvious contradictions because the movement is not only an ideology anymore. It is a family, a language, a way to know who the villains are. The more you have paid for a belief, the more painful it becomes to stop believing. This is not wisdom, it is investment. But investment can feel like loyalty, and loyalty can feel like morality. And morality is very hard to question without pain. The phrase, changing your mind, sounds too small for this. It sounds like switching seats. But often, changing your mind means grieving a version of the world. It means realizing certain people were not what you thought, or that you were not what you thought, or that the map you used for years was not just incomplete, but harmful. No wonder the body reacts. There is evidence that dissonance is not only a calm verbal process. Neuroimaging studies have linked dissonance-related states to regions involved in conflict monitoring and aversive feeling, including the anterior cingulate cortex and anterior insula. We should not exaggerate this into the claim that changing your mind is literally the same as physical injury. It is not that simple, but it is fair to say that the body participates. The conflict is not floating above you like an abstract equation. It moves through your nervous system. It appears as heat, tightness, agitation, the urge to escape, the hunger to reply, the sudden need to make the other person smaller, so the argument becomes less dangerous. You feel it in the throat before you form a sentence. You feel it in the chest before you write the comment. You feel it in the stomach when someone says the thing you have been avoiding saying to yourself. This is why the first response to threatening information is often physical. Close the tab, laugh at the source, attack the messenger, change the subject, find a friendly article, text someone who will agree. Do anything except sit in the exposed space where the old belief is not dead yet, but no longer fully alive. That exposed space is dissonance, and the mind hates staying there. The mind wants closure. Even false closure can feel better than honest suspense. A bad explanation that protects the self may calm the body faster than a good question that destabilizes it. This is also why facts alone often fail. A fact enters a person not as pure information, but through a field of loyalties. It passes through family history, social class, religion, professional identity, humiliation, memory, and the small private need to remain the hero of one's own story. A belief can be a badge, a passport, a family heirloom, a wound, a shield, a way of saying I am one of us, not one of them. So when that belief is challenged, the challenge may not feel intellectual. It may feel like exile. If I accept this, will my people still recognize me? If I admit this, was my father wrong? If I change this view, what happens to all the years I spent judging those who already knew? If this is true, what part of my life becomes embarrassing? This is identity protective cognition. The mind protects beliefs that protect belonging. It does not do this because humans are uniquely evil. It does this because social death has always mattered to the nervous system. To be cast out, mocked, abandoned, or morally condemned is not a small thing to a tribal animal. Modern life pretends belief is personal, but many beliefs are social organs. They connect us to groups, histories, rituals, enemies, and inherited language. To remove one can feel like cutting tissue. This is why people may become angriest, not at the weakest criticism, but at the criticism that almost lands. A completely absurd insult can be dismissed. It has no door into the self, but a statement with a piece of truth inside it can burn, because it knows where the handle is. The anger says, "Do not enter." Behind the anger there may be shame. Behind the shame, grief. Behind the grief, the memory of someone you failed to protect, or someone you became in order to feel protected. This is where cognitive dissonance touches morality. Sometimes changing your mind means admitting that a belief was wrong. Other times it means admitting that the belief allowed you to do harm. That is much harder. If I was wrong about that person, then maybe I was cruel. If I was wrong about that group, then maybe I participated in something ugly. If I was wrong about my motives, then maybe the story I told myself was not honesty, but self-protection. Moral injury is not the same thing as cognitive dissonance, but it lives nearby. It describes the wound that can occur when people violate, witness, or become implicated in actions that break their moral framework. In ordinary life, a smaller version appears when the truth threatens our moral identity. Most people can survive being called mistaken. Fewer can calmly survive realizing they were complicit, or selfish, or cowardly, or obedient in a moment that required courage, or cruel while believing themselves fair. So the mind resists. It says, "Everyone did it." It says, "I did not know." It says, "The situation was different then." It says, "They are exaggerating." It says, "I have suffered too." It says, "Why are we talking about this now?" Again, some of this may be relevant. Context matters. Memory matters. Human behavior is complicated, but context can become anesthesia when its purpose is not to understand the wound, but to avoid feeling it. There is a difference between explaining yourself and excusing yourself. The difference is not always visible from the outside, but inside, somewhere, the body knows whether the explanation is opening the door or locking it. This is why cognitive dissonance is so central to dark human behavior. Not because it makes people monsters, but because it allows ordinary people to remain ordinary in their own eyes. while doing things they would condemn in someone else. It protects continuity. It keeps the self from splintering. A person can cross a line and still need breakfast the next morning. They still need to go to work. They still need to hug their children. They still need to believe the face in the mirror belongs to someone basically decent. So the mind helps. It narrates. It softens. It frames. It selects. It remembers the provocation more vividly than the harm. It remembers the good intention more vividly than the consequence. It remembers the exception more vividly than the pattern. Memory becomes a lawyer with access to the evidence room, and over time, the defended version may feel like the only version that ever existed. The person is not consciously lying anymore. They have become loyal to the story that made life bearable. This is one of the most frightening things about self-justification. It can begin as a choice and end as a personality. A person who repeatedly refuses the pain of dissonance may become someone who no longer recognizes the feeling of truth approaching. They only recognize threat. At that point, every correction is disrespect. Every question is betrayal. Every mirror is an enemy. The world becomes divided into those who protect the story and those who endanger it. But before we judge that too comfortably, we have to return to ourselves, because cognitive dissonance is not a disease that happens to other people. It is part of the price of having a self. If you have values, you can violate them. If you have identity, it can be threatened. If you have a past, it can be reinterpreted. If you have belonged somewhere, you can fear losing that belonging. You may believe you love truth, but notice what happens when truth arrives without respect for your self-image. Notice what happens when evidence points toward your hypocrisy, your naivety, your cruelty, your wasted years, your convenient silence. The love of truth is easy when truth flatters you. It becomes more interesting when truth humiliates you. Most of us do not reject painful truths by saying, "I reject painful truths." We say the timing is suspicious. We say the tone is wrong. We say this is not the real issue. We say there are bigger problems. We say I need more evidence, while quietly hoping the evidence never becomes enough. Skepticism can be noble. It can protect us from manipulation. But skepticism can also be hired by fear. And when fear hires skepticism, the questions may be intelligent, while the mission remains dishonest. This does not mean every uncomfortable claim is true. Pain is not proof. Sometimes the criticism really is unfair. Sometimes the source really is corrupt. Sometimes your first belief survives careful examination. Sometimes refusing to change your mind is not stubbornness, but integrity. The problem is that from the inside, stubbornness and integrity can feel almost the same. Both stand firm. Both resist pressure. Both can speak in moral language. The difference is often found in whether you are still willing to let reality touch you. A person with integrity can remain open while unconvinced. A person defending dissonance needs the question to disappear. That is a subtle difference, but it is everything. There is a moment before the defense becomes speech. It happens quickly. A message appears. A fact lands. Someone says your version of the story is incomplete. The body tightens. The mind gathers weapons. You can almost feel the old machinery starting up. That moment is important because it is still pre-verbal. The lie has not yet dressed itself. The justification has not yet become elegant. For 1 second, there is only pain and the possibility of watching it, not obeying it, not suppressing it, not turning it into immediate agreement, just watching it. The pain says, "Protect me." But protect what? That may be the most useful question. Not, "How do I prove them wrong?" Not, "How do I make this feeling stop?" But what part of me believes it will die if this is true? Sometimes the answer is pride, sometimes belonging, sometimes innocence, sometimes grief, sometimes an old humiliation that taught you never to be wrong in front of anyone again. Sometimes it is the child self that learned love was conditional on being impressive, good, loyal, or correct. Changing your mind can hurt because a belief may have been carrying something for you. It may have carried your need for order, your loyalty to family, your hatred of someone who harmed you, your explanation for why suffering happened, your sense that you are not foolish. When the belief breaks, the thing it carried falls. This is why no one changes deeply held beliefs through facts alone. Facts may open the crack, but something else has to hold the person while the old structure fails. Without that, the person will often choose the lie that keeps them whole over the truth that leaves them homeless. This is not a sentimental excuse. People are responsible for what they do with their dissonance. The fact that self-protection feels painful does not make it harmless, but understanding the pain makes the behavior less mysterious. A mind under threat does not become more philosophical. It becomes strategic. It searches for shelter. It searches for allies. It searches for one sentence that will let the old structure stand. You can see this in yourself when you read criticism and immediately look for the weakest part, not the strongest part, the weakest. If you can defeat one bad sentence, maybe you can dismiss the entire accusation. If one person on the other side behaves badly, maybe your side is clean again. If one detail is wrong, maybe nothing has to change. This is how the mind escapes through the smallest hole, and sometimes it is right to notice the hole. Precision matters. False accusations matter. Bad evidence matters. But if you only become precise when precision protects you, then precision has become a disguise. The body often knows before the language does. It knows by the rush, the urgency, the almost pleasurable contempt, the immediate relief when you find a counter-argument, the way your breathing settles when someone you trust confirms your old belief. That relief can feel like truth, but relief and truth are not the same thing. Relief only means the threat has been reduced. It does not mean the new information was false. It does not mean the old belief was right. It only means the self has found a way to continue without reorganizing. This is where the title becomes important. Changing your mind feels painful, and it is not weakness. But pain is also not proof that you should stop. Pain only tells you that something meaningful is being touched. A muscle can hurt because it is injured. It can also hurt because it is being used for the first time in years. The mind is not a muscle in the simple motivational sense, but the metaphor helps. Some forms of inner pain are warnings. Others are thresholds. The hard part is learning the difference. There is no perfect method. No checklist can guarantee that your openness is real. Human beings can turn even humility into performance. We can brag about changing our minds. We can use uncertainty as a way to avoid commitment. We can call ourselves nuanced when we are only afraid to choose. So the answer cannot be a slogan. Be open-minded is too clean. Follow the evidence is too clean. Admit when you are wrong is true, but it misses the darkness. It misses the fact that being wrong may ask you to grieve, apologize, lose status, disappoint your group, question your parents, confront your past, or stop seeing yourself as the person who always knew better. A real change of mind can feel like mourning. You may have to mourn the old certainty, the old enemy, the old innocence, the old version of your life where your choices made perfect sense, the old room where everything had a place. No wonder people resist. But there is another danger. If you refuse dissonance every time it hurts, your world becomes smaller. You keep only the truths that can enter without rearranging the furniture. You call that peace. But it is not peace. It is a locked house. Inside that house, nothing can surprise you. Nothing can correct you. Nothing can forgive you properly because you have not admitted what happened. Nothing can reach the parts of you that are still defending a war that ended years ago. The locked house may feel safe, but over time it becomes airless. The beginning of freedom may not be changing your mind quickly. Quick change can be another performance. It may be the ability to remain in dissonance a little longer than your ego wants. To let the sentence sit there. To let the body burn without immediately turning the burn into a verdict. You do not have to surrender to every claim that hurts you, but you might ask why this particular claim hurts in this particular way. You might notice the difference between careful doubt and panic dismissal. You might notice when your intelligence starts moving too fast, not toward understanding but toward escape. Return to the screen. The sentence is still there. Your hand is still near the keyboard. The argument has already formed in your head, sharp and satisfying. You could type it now and file the first wave of relief, but for once you pause. The throat is tight. The face is warm. The chest feels defensive, almost insulted by the possibility that the paragraph might deserve a second reading. You do not change your mind, not yet. You simply notice that your first reaction is not neutral. That noticing is small, but it is not nothing, because the first prison is not the belief. The first prison is the inability to feel threatened without immediately calling the threat false. Maybe changing your mind hurts because a part of you built a home inside the old belief. When the belief shakes, that part thinks it is about to be abandoned. It does not know there may be life after the story. It only knows the walls are moving, so it shouts. It argues. It attacks. It calls fear logic and logic betrayal. And maybe maturity begins when you can hear that shouting without making it king, not silencing it, not humiliating it, not pretending you are above it, just hearing it as the sound of a self trying to survive its own revision. The truth does not always arrive gently. Sometimes it arrives like a knock at a door you were hoping no one would find. Behind that door are the memories you edited, the apologies you postponed, the loyalties you mistook for evidence, and the beliefs you kept because they kept you recognizable. Opening the door may hurt, but leaving it closed hurts differently. One pain rearranges you, the other preserves you exactly as you were, and perhaps that is the choice cognitive dissonance keeps hiding from us. Not pain or no pain, not weakness or strength, but which kind of pain you are willing to live with. The pain of letting an old self die, or the pain of spending your life defending it. Maybe the first sign of freedom is not changing your mind quickly. Maybe it is the moment you feel the truth hurt, and still do not immediately call the pain evidence against the truth.